Right, so final disassembly is accomplished. I've got the cap out the bottom down there, you can see that hole there, and that is the back of that bearing there. As you can see, I'm just testing the shaft in there now, and they are thrust bearings, and this is the cap that came out of it. It's got a hole in it, and it's just a nicely machined piece of steel which backs up that bearing. On the other side of it is a cap with 3 bolts on this side which pushes the 2 thrust bearings together. Now that is held into location with a dog point scrub screw right there, which I could not get out. It would turn around about quarter turn, but it would not come out, and it wasn't Loctited in. So what and there is part of the grub screw there. See it? Just there, just so I get the threads off of it. The dog points fell out when I was cleaning that. I thought it was snapped off, I thought it was threaded in, but as I was cleaning it, it fell out. It's on the floor somewhere. Never to be seen again, but it is a dog point. So what I guess happened is, when I was turning those threads in back gear, the amount of pressure that was on that shaft was forcing the shaft that way, which forced that to move, as the cap with the 3 bolts ain't moving. The cap, which is a slip fit, a very nice slip fit, but just a dog point holding it in, could move. And the dog point is very weak, and I suggested it turned into an eccentric cam and moved that way, which allowed play in the bearings, which meant that shaft had about 1 millimetre of play up and down, which allowed the gears to disengage under heavy loads. So I have figured out what happened now, which is good. The bad thing is, I need a 3/16 dog point cap screw, grub screw with a flat head, because I don't think an Allen key one's the appropriate one for in there, but we'll probably get a 3/16 UNF bolt and make a flathead dog point out of it. Now the person who built this last time clearly didn't take it to pieces as far as I did, and they probably didn't figure out how to get that end cap out there, because the way they adjusted this was with a punch and they shimmed it. Okay, I'm not going to have to shim it anymore. The reason I'm not going to have to shim it is because when you install this part, which it might fall to pieces when I install it, when I install this part like this now, it goes straight in. I couldn't get it in or out like that before, and that's because the cover, which is missing, wherever it is, it's somewhere, protrudes in so far that you can't literally lift it up enough to get it out. Now I can lift it straight out, straight up, straight down. So the whole thing can go in as a unit, pre-adjusted. So I can pre-adjust the bearings with all the seal. We've got to put the seal units in there. Yeah, the seal units fit there and there. So I can pre-adjust all the bearings and all the load up, not having to shim it or anything, and then drop it in. Dry fit, assemble the spindle at the front here, adjust the bearings up, see how the gears engage and disengage, adjust this forwards and backwards, scribe a line where I want it, take the main spindle back to pieces again, take all this out, clean it all up, put the red semi-setting sealant on it, so oil can't get past the bearing outer races, or the, shall I say, so oil can't get past the oil seal outer sections. Plonk it back in its position, put its top cap on, torque all that down, that'll be in position, sorted. Then I can assemble the spindle. All this time I've got to have that bottom gear in position, that's got to go in first. And that will mean making the dog point, installing that for a start, putting that bearing in for a start, dropping the gear in, slipping the shaft through the gear with a bit of lubricant on it, putting the back bearing on, the front bearing on shall I say, put the front bearing cap in, probably a bit of blue or a little bit of red around that to seal that up, torque that in. That'll be that bottom one set. So that first, that second, spindle third, end cap last. That's just a axial stabilizer, and then the gearbox is on at the back. It is for the Holbrook lathe, little grub screw. They've probably got across the workshop now, because these are metric collets. Put my finger on the end so it doesn't pop it out too far. It's going to pop it out any second. Come on. Is that coming out now? It is. There it is. So it's that little minute grub screw. That is the first job on the new mill. Well, it has done its job. There she be. Right in there. And that holds that cap in. So I will do a trial fit now, which will involve me putting this bearing back in. Oh, help. Let's get that out of the way. So that will involve me putting this shaft back in with these two thrust bearings. I'll just make sure it's got some tension on the thrust bearings now. If so, that cap will get siliconed in with some non-setting red Arlamar Hylodite. We're here on the Holbrook lathe. I have the two bearings on the shaft and the gear on the shaft. Bit of oil on the shaft. Not too much because I want to keep it quite dry, as I'm going to start putting sealant in now. So I've got the end cap here just slightly inserted, and I've got the screw taken out. The screw is over here on the saddle, just there. The cap, still need to brake clean that one to get it nice and dry, but by the by, everything in there is brake cleaned and dry. So I'm now going to get some red sealant and wipe it around that cap before pushing it in, and that should drag some into the hole with it, hopefully enough to seal it. I was getting quite fed up with oil coming down the belts, and hopefully all the stuff that I'm doing now is going to stop that happening. So that's the first port of call, and that's how that's going to happen. So that wiped with red, pushed in my fingers until it's just about where the threads are lining up. Then the slight taper I've put on the end of the grub screw will align the last little bit, and then it will drag it into the normal bit, and it will seat on the taper inside there, because there is a taper inside the hole there. Once that's installed, I shall give that a quick wipe and put some red around that and install that. There is a 5 thou gap, so there will be a 5/1000th of an inch preload on those thrust bearings there. Hopefully that's not too much, it should be fine. She is fitted, I've put a little bit of molybdenum disulfide into the SAE 30 classic motor oil, and it spins. As you can probably see, there's oil around the gear. It felt a little bit tight when it was dry, but now it's got some oil in the bearings. It just feels tightish, so fingers crossed they won't burn themselves out rapidly, but time will tell on that one. Next problem. I need an inch and 15/16 spacer, or whatever that is. 2 and 15/16, yeah, 2 inch 15/16 spacer ring, so I can press that out. I ain't got one, so I am going to have to make one. Yippee-dee. Oh, onwards and upwards, let's get on with that. After these two seals are fitted, to replace the old git seals, I can build this unit up. And this unit fits there, so then the belts will be installed. Yes, that is next. Seal units on, preload or nip up with the locking ring, lock the locking ring, install with the cap on. I've already cleaned and dried the cap, and that holds everything down. So that'll be the next install part, and then I can do the rear block. And here's the rear block, and this needs a bit of modification before I can fit that. So I've got to press the bearing in, but before I press the bearing in, I've got to put the oil weight in, and I drilled a little pilot hole which is just there. You can see that, just a little dot. So I've got to mill across there with a bull nose end mill, and then drill a hole through so the oil can get into the bearings at the back. The reason that has to happen is because once that cap is on there and sealed, no oil can get into that back bit at all. And it couldn't anyway because the hole was blocked off, and although I was squeezing oil, it did feel like it wasn't really going in. It wasn't going in, it burnt the bearing out. It's not going to do that this time because I am going to modify that back plate after I've fitted that. It's getting further together and I'm just mocking things up. So the main spindle is in through the thrust bearings, and the back gear carriage is in, just resting in, and the belts are in, just checking for clearance. And there may be a little bit of rubbing, there might not be, it's pretty close. One problem, I'm just getting the gear alignment here. That's what I'm guessing this whole arrangement is for here, and I'm marking it out. Now I've got the bearing flush with the front face now, which is a pretty easy way to line it up, and it could just do with maybe 0.5 millimetre more, do you reckon? It's not bad there, is it? So I think that's where I'm putting it in, and I guess that's what that screw is there for. Just set those in there. I don't know, but whatever. I am going to set that in there. Now, here on this shaft here, can you see these indents? I always wonder what they are for. All these here. I believe that's where it catches the back gear. So if I disengage the back gear now, it's now disengaged. Maybe we can get some more light in there. So I'll talk about there, maybe. And that gap there now is minuscule. So don't really want to come that half millimetre forwards, do I? So I'm going for the rule of two lessers. The lesser evil is I've got pretty good engagement there. It just matters how much engagement we've got there down the bottom on that gear, which will be on this gear here. So I might just mock that up before I put it back together again, just to make absolutely certain that everything is going to line up. So when I took it apart, I took this plate off here and left it attached to this, well, left it in its position in that area there. And I was wondering why. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter which way you orientate this piece, whether you put one pin at the bottom or 2 pins at the bottom, there's just not quite enough space to get it in there. So that is the reason, and I have to do these fiddly bolts up while installing it all. And I believe then I can get the nut in at the same time, so I'll put that in there at the same time, then slip it all together, then tighten this up, and then nip the grub screw up, and the grub screw would be here, that one there. I am about there. So spindle free works. Put it into normal gear, and I can't properly turn. I can just about turn it because the belts are touching. I've got to put some tension on to stop them from binding. And back gear, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to turn back gear, but it does engage. So all the gears are working and spindle free works. The back plate, I have drilled the oil way. There's the bottom one, and I couldn't just simply swing it around because it didn't line up, and the bolt hole circle is not parallel, is not symmetrical, so I can't do that. Now, bearing is in. All I need to do now is install the red Hyalotite, whatever it's called, and then bolt it together. Job will be a good in. And then I'll load it with oil, and I've got to make some more oilers because I need to be able to trust these oilers, and then the job will be a good in. So I don't know how many pumps it's going to take to fill that cavity up, but that cavity needs to be filled up to around about here. So both the pulley bearing and this bearing get oil. I will be doing that. Right, I am coming to the end of my days off now, so I got quite a lot done. I've rebuilt the headstock today. Hopefully it'll be alright. It feels good. There is no play in it. On the back end, which you go do. No play. Now I could lift that up and down and go. And I'm just wondering whether the front bearings had come loose. But we will soon find out, because if it needs front bearings, I've got to do all that again. Yes, the Holbrook is nearly back working again. Just got some final touches to do, which is rebuilding the thrust bearing here. I've got to make some oilers now, because these oilers are rubbish unless you've got the appropriate high pressure pump to get past them, and It's a bit hit and miss, to be fair. That oil port works. I've put the oiler right into it and squirted it into it. I've actually got oil coming out the top here. I've overfilled it, but well, bothered. I've definitely got oil in that cavity now. Definitely. Whether it's going to leak out, I don't know. It won't be long. I will be giving it a go soon. So, a couple of more things to tidy up. Got to put the bearing block on there. Got to put the gear train on the back end here. I'll be putting the standard on because I just ain't gonna have time to do that today. Not this weekend. And I don't know if you can see in there, not very well. I've got it sitting on the pulley, but that pulley needs modifying, so I've got to take that pulley off and modify it slightly. It will be weaker, but well, I ain't bothered. Got 6mm to take out of it. I think it was. It could be 5mm, 2.5 or 3mm per sheath side to take out on the outer edges. She's back together. Like 99.9%, all the gears are in, set up. I'm ready to cut 28 threads per inch, which is the 1/2 inch BSP for them. I need to make some oilers. So it's not quite ready, but it's ready to use. Lead screws all in, adjusted. Travel stop bar is in, set nicely, works a lot better now, a lot cleaner. The spindle nose cover is a bit shinier. The bearing pressure plate is a bit shinier. The reverse gearbox is shinier. It's all shiny at the moment in comparison to when I first got the rust bucket it was. Now I need to clean the bedways off because there's a little bit of debris from being left for about 3 months. Like there. Bit of fun. Got tooling. Looks to be pretty good. I'll come in on this one here. And it's cut in the back. It's cut in the back and they look about even. I could maybe twist it to the passenger side a little bit. Of course we're in England, so that's to the left, but I might just loosen it off a bit. And then just a little bit there like that. Yeah, that's eyeballing bang on. So I've got to stop. Oh, don't hit the chuck when I'm at the stock. It's very close. I don't know if you can see that. Chuck's here, chip guard's here, and it's almost touching. I've got the compound at the fullest extent and the gibs locked. I've got the angle pulled back a little bit and the tool pulled back, so when I'm in this I can go all the way into the bottom, touch the bottom if I need to, which I don't need to. There you go, that's touching the bottom. Yeah, that's touching the bottom. This tool's not touching, nothing's touching. Perfect. I could have just choked it up a little bit more, but where it is safe. So, being as I don't have a DRO, this is going to be a bit of guesswork. but I'm going to take around about 1mm off of this face and around about 1mm off of this face, and by the looks of it I'm going to be taking just shavings off of this face here as well. So I'll just shave the two inner faces off first, which I didn't want to do, but I'm going to have to. Right, are we in low gear? Yes we are. That will undoubtedly be it. That is 30mm exactly, which is what I was measuring on the other one. So I will be happy at that, and that is good enough. That's back gear. We've got oil protruding out of the front bearing. I know there's oil in the rear bearing at the moment. It's a bit vibratory. And just running these belts in for a second. They were touching. You see those white marks? That's where it was obviously grinding the back of it off a little bit. But now it's working. It's working. So this is direct drive, and I find it difficult to turn it by hand, but it's turning. Obviously a lot quieter in direct drive than it is in back gear. Definitely working. The reason why I'm still working tonight is because, well, I won't have the Chinese, but they were short, so I've ordered a pizza. They take 40 minutes, so I thought, let's get the pulley on and give it a go. So I wasn't happy, and all day at work I've been thinking, I'm going to take it to pieces, and I'm putting the cam belt on, I'm going to do the cam belt. And I thought to myself, well, that means my lathe is going to be out of action again for a period of time. So I've got a second pulley. That was the first pulley, which I did many moons ago, and it was on a video called Turning Pulleys on a Hand-Powered Lathe or something like that. Turning pulleys by hand on a lathe. Hand-powered lathe turning pulleys. Something like that. And it was a little bit rubbish. So I decided to bore that out and sleeve it. So I've plopped it in. And as you can see, one of the chips on the bed there, I've took first cuts, and there's some chips in the boring bar there. Now, it was making a clonking noise, and I've got it back running again. Back together. And yeah, the part isn't in square, I've just put it in so the chuck isn't flailing. I've got a knock. Oh no, I have a knock. Not good. So that's what I've been doing, making my lathe go from grind to knock. Clunk, 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 clunk. And now this is the noise we're making. That's a bit unfair. Let's disengage the gears. So it's similar to what it was before, without the fan belt noise, because there was a constant. Right, here we go. We have some high-speed steel. It's in direct drive. I've put no oil in today. Let's put some oil in. Spin it around a bit. More oil. More oil. Sounds pretty sweet. I've still got more to take off the fan belt. Let's just show you the fan belt. I've got all this plastic down here. If I can show you in close, that is all dust from the fan belt because I've been angle grinding it. And we've got it to that stage now. So I think the fan belts are fighting each other, not quite the same length. But I've got the advantage with my mount, the rotor mount I made, I can orient the motor at different angles, which I can compensate for different length belts very, very slightly. So it looks like this front belt is just jumping a little bit. You see it getting longer and shorter at the back there? I don't know what you can see there. That front belt, the one that's to the right hand side, you can see it dancing forwards and backwards. And that says to me it's not quite the same length. And it's also pulling the whole motor up. If you see on my mount's slightly flexible as well, and it is just pulling the motor up slightly. So that's all working good. She sounds sweet, definitely usable. 100% I'm definitely getting oil in that front bearing. It's coming out. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. And it's still just catching it inside. I think from this angle. Yeah, I can hear it there. So there's a few more tweaks to do. Let's switch her off. Watch the electronic brake, it's brilliant. Look at that. That's nicely tuned now, so all those settings are inside the VFD and the electronic e-brake is on the back of the lathe. I've showed that before, it's right down there. I won't be able to get a very good picture of it, to be fair. Oh, there you go, you can see it, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. Anyway. It is just two heating elements out of a microwave, a combination hot microwave. Just try not to knock over my gas bottle. Well, like I was saying, there's lots of dust here. This is all fan belt dust. I had my angle grinder in with the belt running and a 60 grit, and it's took quite a lot off the back of the belt. It's quite smooth now, the back of the belt. It's been sanded. And before it was a struggle to turn it by hand, and now I can oh yeah, I can turn it by hand now. Yeah, it's not catching anywhere at all now. No high spots at all. Clearly it's a lot easier if I just put it into neutral and it spins beautifully. That's because the belts aren't spinning now. But it's still movable by hand now, which is good. Although it's still slightly touching, I think. It might be just because the belts are fighting each other now. But it is very, very usable. Oilers. I've ordered some 90° 1/4 inch BSP fittings, and I've ordered a syringe, a 50ml syringe, which has got graduations down it, which I'm going to try and modify onto it. And then I'll have some kind of soft cap, which I just fill it up with oil before I start. And I might put a wick oiler in it, I don't know. You don't need that much oil, because the cavity, as long as it's not leaking, and it isn't leaking at the moment, as long as it's not leaking. I think it's leaking here. Well, it might be. Yeah, well, it's coming out the front there. As long as it's not literally wetting it out down here, like it was before, and it's not. It will retain some oil inside its cavities, and I know this is definitely getting oil in this side now, 100%. So I'm quite happy at that. I really need my collet closer making now, so I'm going to concentrate a bit more on my collet closer. There's my collet closer. So that's going to take the place of this nut and be on there. And those of you that have seen this before, many moons ago, will know that it had more threads. So I've got less threads here now. And that can only be a good thing. Everything's tight and I've got less threads, yet I took some spaces out. And I say that's to me carefully aligning the unit inside and getting exactly where it should be. I've got full engagement on these gears inside now. I'm not quite sure that it was like that before, but it is now. And this plate here looks a lot better. I like the shine. This was rust. This was pure rust. And that back plate which I took out, that was pretty rusty as well. So the two rusty items that I really wanted cleaning have been cleaned up. That's good. I'm still contemplating the cam belt conversion, and when I do that, by that time I will have more polishing equipment, more metalwork polishing equipment, and I should probably buff everything then, buff all these plates and buff the apron assembly and the compound, which these are all rusty. This was basically an orange or red colour when I first got it. The chuck, the four-jaw chuck was seized up, and you can see all the pitting. Take the light off a bit. You can see all the pitting in it. It was terrible. Absolutely, this was just a solid lump of rust. This four-jaw chuck. I don't think it had ever been used. Well, it hadn't been used by the owner of the motorcycle workshop that had it before me. It must have been sat on the floor for 20 years or something. And I'll put it through that electrolysis, and it's usable. But I've been trying to find an integrated D12 chuck, and I've talked to chuck manufacturers, and they'll go, "Oh, it's a D13." No, it's not a D13. It's a D12. And I finally got a company which looked for me the other day, and he gave me a ring back and said, "Well, that's a rare beast, isn't it? Good luck finding one of those." I was like, oh great. But I thought when he rang me back, I thought, let's go on. I said, I don't mind 5, 6, 7 inch, something in that range of a four-jaw chuck with that D12 integrated into it. I'll have a look for you. And he couldn't find one. But when you look at the integrated chuck in comparison to one with a back plate on it, it's so much more tidy. I don't think you gain much because, you know, this space here, which isn't filled with back plate, this little step here would just be a back plate coming out to the side of the chuck and adding more weight to it. But I don't think it really matters. I might just get a Bison four-jaw chuck or a Japanese one. I don't know. I mean, I'd know, I want something deserving of such a nice labour. I don't want to put a cheapy four-jaw chuck on like the one I tried from Sanyo. I mean, I'm using it, the Sanyo one on the mini lathe. It's not perfect by any means. And this old worn-out Bernard Pratt one is good in comparison. I can clamp a rod in that, and I know full well I'll be able to get it straight. You know, if it's clamped on full, if I clamp the whole shaft, then I'll load sticking out. I'll be able to clock it in, and it'll be axially and radially clocked in perfectly almost every time. It's a bit worn out, but it's getting to the point where I need to replace it. But it's certainly better than a brand new Sanyo chuck, that is for sure. I'm not going to chuck this away for a Sanyo chuck.